what did living with cancer teach you about yourself?
Gee, we jumped straight into the deep end. I like that. It's an amazing thing I do. I'm sure you know, I do a lot of keynote speaking about resilience and leaning into adversity. And part of that that particular talk on adversity and the value of leaning into it, I talk about what I call the waterfall of mortality. So we're all going down a river of life, and we cross eddies and rapids and challenges, snags, rocks, sometimes big, beautiful ponds. And when you get told, as I did, that you've got 3 months to live because there's a giant tumor in your head and you just can't make it, that prediction by others allows you to see the waterfall, which is the end of mortality. And to explain how that affects you, you learn to paddle backwards really good. And you learn to look around at what you can hold on to and look around in your river of life to see what will add value to you. And you look around to see how you can add value to the river and those attached to the river with you. So it's something I often say this, I wish everybody could see the waterfall of mortality, and then they would have the respect for life that I do. And to answer your question simply, living with cancer gives me an incredible, deep, on many levels, respect for life.
To use your analogy there, Baz, what did paddling backwards look like for you, and what were you holding on to?
Well, paddling backwards is an analogy, but what could I let go of that was speeding my journey? What could I grab hold of that would slow the journey? What was important, and how can I get more of that? And, that narrows your thinking. Before you get told you have a limited time to live, lifespan is abstract, okay? When you're given 90 days, you think, I can't paddle backwards because the stream is going down, but paddling backwards effectively slows this process down. Or to put it another way, I realized that day I had to invest in as many things I could that would give me a dividend of extra minutes or moments or days or weeks. So that's what paddling backwards means. In that case, investing in things that would add value to my life and the life of the people that I love.
So what were those things?
The people I love. To put that in perspective, I think I was sitting on 3 boards at that point. Now, I didn't think I was going to go in 90 days. I refused to believe that. Life had given me predictions right through it. Life had analyzed me a certain way. As a young kid, I was dyslexic. So the education system saw me as hard work. It saw me as a failure, a hindrance, and hard to deal with. I knew inside that I had great ideas. I knew that I had an amazing imagination, but I just didn't have the language that suited their, what do they call it these days? Not the algorithm.
Yeah.
I didn't have the language to suit the algorithm of the day. So when I was given that time to live, I said to myself, this is my moment to prove to you that the algorithm with me is wrong. Stop trying to predict my life. At school, you predicted I'd be nothing. Even at work, I always had this feeling that people didn't take me seriously enough. And when I'd come up with an idea, not a lot of people ever backed that idea. And I sort of thought when I got the 3 months to live, I said to myself, well, I'm going to prove to you, the world, life, the universe, that you got my algorithm wrong, and I'm going to beat you despite you. And to beat that algorithm means this. It means loving every second of every day you have. So rather than ponder and wonder about what it was going to be like to be dead, I concentrated heavily on the love of my lives, my family, my closest friends. But then I also lent heavily into the things that can add value to me, like the nutrition, the meditation, the breath work, all those holistic things that can add to the treatment. So to answer your question, I lent into anything that I felt would offer me a dividend of health, and just health, not just health, a dividend of legacy.
You may have noticed that we've recently rebranded the podcast. The good news is that offer of a free coffee on me is still available. But here's what I need you to do. I need you to pause the podcast right now, go into YouTube, hit that subscribe button, then go over to Spotify, hit that follow button. It'll take 30 seconds of your time and it's absolutely free. And then if you see me in person and you can show me that you're following the podcast on both platforms, I'll buy you a coffee as a thank you. Thank you for continuing to support the podcast. It means the world to me. Did you have that perspective before the diagnosis? Were you already in a place to be able to execute that immediately, or did you need to sort of gather your thoughts and think, how can I get around this 90-day thing?
This is a statement I haven't said very often, but it's in my head, so I'll say it. Years earlier, I nearly committed suicide. And the fact that I'm still here is a bit of a spoiler alert. That didn't work out. But what saved me from that moment also was a micro step on realizing the value of adversity. I've said in the past, I'm a very confident person now, and I appeared very confident back then, but I don't think I had the resilience before this incident I don't think I had the same resilience as I did confidence, and they're two very different things. Resilience is the ability to adapt and change to suit a situation and be willing to go through the hard steps to get there, whereas confidence is just the way you walk into the room and show yourself off. One has depth and one's more an eggshell.
Just on resilience, Baz, do you think it's a character trait that is on the incline or on the decline?
Resilience, it's as scarce as hen teeth. As scarce as hen's teeth. I'll say it again. I saw your face. What did he just say? No, resilience is becoming more and more scarce every day, particularly for young people that I'm very lucky to work with a lot of young people. In this world that we live in, there is just not a lot of adversity. There is just not a lot of difficult moments. And we live and I do this with my own children. I want them to earn their own strides, but so often I want to just make sure it's perfect for them. So if we're making sure it's perfect for our children, how can they feel that arduous feeling of adversity? And how can they fight through that and learn from that and build the muscle, which is resilience? They can't. And I'm someone who thinks about it all the time. So for the average person, all we want, and we're working, mum and dad are generally working very hard, all they want is the happiness of their family. All they want is peace and quiet and happiness. So they'll buy or arrange or make sure everything's in place that a child doesn't face adversity. That's a big mistake. So in the younger generation, we don't have a lot for that reason. In my generation, which is another generation above yours, the words resilience and, resilience wasn't a word when I was a young man. That was just a way of life. Your mum and dad would be like my mum and dad, is that they fixed everything that got broken. Now, that didn't mean they were geniuses. They just meant they just kept trying until they got it. And those micro moments are building resilience as well. I've forgotten the question, but we were talking about resilience. And we lack it in society. And as I often say, the fish rots from the head. Our governance in this country, I'm not going to get political, but there is no resilience in our governance. Doesn't matter which party you're interested in, none of them have any backbone. They'll go with whatever the media says, just so they get voted in again. So if we see that as a society, why are we going to push harder for a better community? No one else is. So effectively and wholly as a community, resilience is a dying asset.
So if resilience needs adversity, why do you what's driving that lack of adversity in today's society?
Over the last decade, and I'm not going to try and blame social media, because if it wasn't for social media, you and I wouldn't be sitting here right now. And I find a lot of value in social media. But what's happened with media in general, the average human is getting thousands of problems thrown at them every second, every moment. In all industries, there's just so much information coming. It's not funny. I'd say it's like you're putting your face in front of a fire hydrant and issues are being thrown at you. Now, we've been given a choice to accept the issues we want to focus on. If you're looking for a boyfriend or a girlfriend, you can look at a picture. I'll try that one. Okay, if it doesn't work, I never talk to them again. You know what I mean? So we've learned the skill of avoiding problems. The council culture. If you don't want to talk to anybody because it's a difficult conversation, you just don't talk anymore. You block them or you erase them or stuff like that. So if it's as simple as that to avoid a problem, when a big problem comes, you don't have the tools to deal with it. I do a lot of work with Are You OK Day. I'm on the board of directors of Are You OK Day. And young males that are experiencing their first relationship breakup. They've never dealt with anything before this. Mum and dad have fixed everything up until now. A, they don't even want to talk to mum and dad about this because they feel they failed someone. And B, they don't know how to talk about it because they've never faced a problem before.
So if there's a lack of adversity in society today, but
let's just clarify something. Adversity is something you can lean into to build resilience. Resilience, though, is adapting to different situations. I think what I'll try and explain it is, we don't adapt that very well anymore. We don't try and adapt anymore. If that picture doesn't suit me perfectly, I don't want it. You see what I mean? If that job doesn't give me the accolades I feel I deserve, I don't do it. And we'll get propped up in some way so that you don't have to do it.
So how do we build resilience today?
Learning that leaning in and facing problems is what gives you a strength that will allow you to lean into bigger problems that will give you more strength. And those problems come with lessons, beautiful lessons that allow us to float higher and be more buoyant in the river of life. And if you float higher, you get to see problems quicker. So because you've got the tools, you can resolve them quicker. And then it becomes a quest for more issues. So I can solve more problems, so I can float higher, get more sunshine on my chest and live a more beautiful life.
So it's leaning into doing hard things.
Yeah, definitely. You look at you, I can see just looking at you, lean into the weights. If you just lifted the same weight as I could lift every day, you wouldn't get the shape you're in now. But you push harder, you build that muscle. It's the same with resilience. You push harder, you'll get more.
I think there is a spillover in terms of, the people I sort of mingle with and train with. I think that's how we sort of build that tolerance up to resilience. We're pushing our bodies in the gym, and that spills over to other areas of our life. We're better equipped, better capable to take on other difficult challenges, given the sort of fitness challenges that we embark on, whether it be a marathon or a high rocks or something other than that. Baz, tell me about the day that you got the cancer diagnosis.
Yeah, wow, what a day! My first cancer, because we got over that cancer, and I live with another cancer now. But it was an interesting day. I'd had a surfing. I'd been surfing. I was surfing at Christmas that year. It was end of 2010, start of 2011. I was peeling across a right-hander, went under the wave. The wave hit my neck, and I don't know, in hindsight, I feel I heard it, but I imagine there was a big crack there and my whole head was pins and needles and I was face down in the water and I thought, have I done something really bad here? Can I stand up? I wasn't sure. And I I was too scared to see if I could find the bottom. But as it happened, I did. My neck it was a terrible pain in my neck. I had pins and needles in my head and pins and needles in my arms and in my feet. But I got out of the water and I laid on the sand. My brother and my nephew came in probably a half an hour later. I said, I don't know what I've done to my neck, but I'm in a lot of pain. I just want to get home and have a shower and that. And, I'd done all the sports. I boxed, I played footy. And I was a builder. So a pain in the neck I put up with it for quite a while. And it was March that year. I'd been seeing my physiotherapist, and she said, listen, Baz, I'm not going to do any more on this neck till we get an x-ray. There's something wrong in there, and I'm just too nervous. I can tell that the tension in my neck was unbelievable. And so I went and saw Jimmy, my old boxing doctor up at Bondi Junction, and I said, I need some x-rays on my neck. I got the x-rays. A couple of days later, I came in and he wasn't there, and I said, I need to pick up the x-rays for my neck. And she said, oh, well, you need to see a doctor. I said, I don't want to see a doctor. I'm going out to see my physio. I don't need a doctor, especially GP, I just want the x-rays. She said, no, you've got to see a doctor. So I was a bit arrogant. I said, all right, whoever's next. And it was a funny thing. This lovely lady comes down and she walks me upstairs. I'd never met this woman in my life, okay, the doctor. She had an accent, I'm not sure, Eastern European, I would imagine. But she was sitting really close to me. She's opened the thing. She's read the report. She's put her hand on my knee, and a tear trickled from her eye. And she said to me, do you have family? And I said, yeah, I've got family. Relax. What's wrong? And she said, I said, I've got a headache. Just relax. You'll be okay. And she goes, you've got a lot more than a headache. You've got a giant tumor in the base of your brain there. And she said, I don't know what to tell you, but it's not good. Well, that was early in the morning. And I went, she insisted on putting me in an ambulance and sending me straight to St. Vincent's, but I didn't. I'd ridden my motorbike there, and I said, no, I'm not going to go to hospital without telling my wife what's going on. So I rode home, told my wife. I was even back then, I was pretty well connected. So I knew I knew someone who would know the right person for this issue. Mm-hmm. So I got into the hospital at about 11 o'clock. It was 9 in the docks. I was in the hospital at 11. That day was biopsies and MRIs, CAT scans, all sorts of stuff. They put a needle, like about a 3 or 4 millimeter needle, through my neck there, past the artery, and then popped it into the tumor, and then slid another rod through that, and then with a hammer, tapped it in. And let me tell you something, I'm petrified of needles, right? And when they told me what they were going to do, I said, yeah, put me out. You can do what you like. And they said, no, you've got to do this conscious, because if we hit the wrong thing, you're going to stroke out, and we need to know. So it was a hell of an arduous day. Speaking of leaning into situations like that. And that day, my wife was by my side most of the day. She'd spent most of the day crying in support, but not being able to control her emotion. And I was sort of in a sense of disbelief. I felt all right. I had a sore neck, but I couldn't see that anything too much was wrong. And by the end of the day, I think it was about 6 p.m., and I was in one of those consultancy rooms. There was a team of 3 doctors. They were regarded as my team. And they sat me down there, and the very first doctor over there looked at me, and she said, and understand, I met this person for the first time, that particular person, at about 3 o'clock that afternoon. It's now about 6. And she made this decision, or this prediction, for a better word. And she delivered it to me like this. She said, Barry, my best advice is to go home, tidy up your affairs, spend as much time as you can with your family. You've got about 3 months maximum. And I think because of the history of my life, where the teacher had told me I wasn't going to amount to anything, I always felt that I wasn't being backed the way I should have been backed, and I felt that I had more to offer to this world. I looked at her and I said this. I said, I appreciate your opinion, but I'm not interested in it. I'd like to talk to these guys, but I'd rather you leave the room. And she was in a hierarchical chain, pyramid right at the top. So she was put a bit back with that and thought I was joking. I said, no, you're not in my team. And if you are, I'm going to find another team, but I don't want you in this room. And I spoke to the next 2 doctors, and I basically said, listen, I don't know I don't know what you know, but I can tell you this about me. I said, I'm going to put everything I've got into this, and I know I can win if you do what you do. And those two doctors are still my doctors today. Like I said, we got through that. Spoiler alert, I'm still alive. And in 2017, that single plasmacytoma myeloma, that giant tumor that had eaten away my C1 and C2 vertebrae and started eating away my skull, because it's a blood cancer that creates tumors within the inside of your bones and eats them from the middle out. And that crack I heard in the surf was my C1 vertebrae crushing like an eggshell, effectively breaking. Well, I didn't break my neck disappeared. C1 dissolved into the body. So, and then in 2017, the cancer came back as multiple myeloma. So it's now right through my body. I think there's about 180 tumors, some of them moderately active, some of them are dormant, but it's not a curable thing, but I manage it with a whole lot of protocols that I've drawn from overseas and what's on offer here as well.
Yeah.
Hence my involvement with Leukemia Foundation as well.
I hate when podcasts get interrupted by a long ad read, so I'm going to keep this one short. If you'd like to trial a virtual assistant for absolutely free for 2 weeks, go to our sponsor's website, www.remotey.com.au/contact, and enter the code MOMENTS. Someone from the team will get in touch with you. That's a virtual assistant for absolutely free for 2 weeks to do all those jobs you don't want to do. The sponsor's website address and that promo code are in the show notes. Thank you. The majority of people, let's say maybe 90% of people, after hearing they've maybe only got 3 months to live.
Yeah.
I don't think they react the way you reacted. I think most people probably panic, get a bit angry, get a bit sad.
Yeah. And they'll die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So?
Well, it was that, like I said, and it's taken me, I didn't think about this on that day,
No.
but I've thought about it a lot. Why did I say those things? I believed in myself. I believed that I could adapt to any situation that was put in front of me. And I was determined to prove that. Like I said, at school, I couldn't prove it. I thought I was great at composition, it used to be called, English. I used to love writing stories. The spelling was wrong and the grammar was wrong, but the story that I was telling, I knew was a beautiful story. But I was always marked down and red lines through every word, and I was hard work, up until not so long ago. I still couldn't read and write, but I had an ability to tell a story. And that wasn't recognized at school. So again, they predicted I would amount to nothing. And it's interesting, I had amounted to, and I did all right in life, Again, I asked for some help from the bank once, and they said, "Nah, you've got it wrong." And as it happened, the help I wanted, if they had given it to me, would have turned into multi-millions. And the person who got that money and did it, see, it was a development that I wanted to do, but the bank wouldn't back me, but they banked someone else. They backed someone else, and that person made millions out of it. But the whole thing was my idea, and just forever being doubted really started to grate on me. And I'd learned, because I couldn't read and write, I'd had to adapt to that. Because I didn't have the grammar or the airs and graces of, let's say, a white-collar worker or whatever it is, I had to adapt continually. And I think when I got that diagnosis, I said to myself, this is the ultimate, fuck 'em. This is the ultimate, let's prove them wrong. Let's prove them that Baz Du Bois will be something one day. And he'll beat this. And so there's one part that I've got to add into this, because I think it's really funny. In the 6 months prior to that very diagnosis, I'd been called by a production company, a giant production company, Shine it was called, about 4 or 5 times to do a TV show called The Renovators. And I didn't like TV. I didn't watch TV, and I didn't really like TV. At the time, when I got the cancer diagnosis, I was traveling the world 6 months of the year on my yacht in the Mediterranean and 6 months of the year in my home in Bondi Beach. So the teachers got it wrong as well, because I was retired at 45 and traveling the world. And on the when I got that diagnosis that day, my phone had been off all day, and I turned it on because I wanted to ring my brother and sister and just let them know the news. I was pretty confident, but I was also a little scared. And when I opened the old phone, or turned it on, it rang straight away, and it was a flip phone, and it was a private number, and that was back when you could answer private numbers, and it wasn't a telemarketer. So I opened it, and for about the fifth or sixth time, this beautiful voice came across. Well, not beautiful. I call her beautiful now, but at the time it used to grate on me. She said, "Hi, Baz, it's Kirsty de la Vase, Cast of Thousands. We're really desperate to get you in for this casting for this TV show." I'd already told them 4 or 5 times I didn't want to do it. I wasn't interested in TV. And I said, "I tell you what, if you ring me back in 3 months and I answer the phone, I'll do the show." And that's how I ended up on TV as well. So on the same day I was given 3 months to live, I was given the option to be a part of a gigantic TV show in Australia. And I said, well, if one works out, I'll do the other. So,
Right.
and so then I went from adapting to live with cancer to adapting to be a TV personality. So that's what resilience does for you.
Yeah.
Gives you opportunities to face and take things that you wouldn't normally be able to get, I think most people would also shit themselves if they were said that you're going to be on the biggest TV show ever made in Australia. I said, yeah, I'll do it if I'm still alive.
I'm interested in what
That's a confusing story, isn't it?
Yeah. If we circle back to the 3 doctors, you've kicked one out of the room. What do the 2 doctors do? What was their course of action that led to you still being here today?
Because I wanted a team. I wasn't going to avoid science, that's for sure. But I just wasn't going to be. I'd learned, and this is what I teach a lot on my online course, is that you've got to pick your team. You can't have someone say, "Well, I'm in charge of you." No, I'm in charge of my team. And someone that can meet me at 3 o'clock and look at some figures like a spreadsheet and say, "No, you're finished." I'm just not interested in that. That's no investment in me as a human being at all. You don't know what I've been through. You don't, you're looking at statistics that compare everybody from the unhealthiest, most obese person in the world to I guess, a really healthy person. You don't know where I fit in that, and you don't know how hard I can fight. I've taken those 3 steps into a ring several times, and she didn't even want to give me the chance to step in, let alone put my hands up. And I said, no, if someone's taken me out, I'm going down swinging, and swinging and loving and taking every second with me.
So what did getting in the ring with cancer and that tumor look like?
It was a tough gig because, and that's what I say now in my courses, in my talks. I wish everybody could see the waterfall of mortality, because you would train every day for that moment. The day I heard it, I was in reasonable condition, but I wasn't in my best condition. I'd slipped back a little bit. My diet wasn't as good as it could be. My physicality, I was still quite robust, but I didn't have the conditioning I had. I didn't have the conditioning that I do today, put it that way. Today and every day now, I'm ready. I'll get in the ring every day now. I don't mean physically get in the ring with someone, but I'm in the best. I'm 65 years old. I'd say in the top percentage of 65-year-olds, because I know that river is still flowing and that waterfall is still there. And the more prepared I am, the easier it will be to paddle backwards, if you will. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
It just means, and so I'll break it down. Your question was, what does being prepared to get in the ring mean? What it means for me, and I teach this every day, is I'm continually curious on how I can be better. I'm continually curious on how I can do better for myself. I'm continually curious on how I can do better for those around me. Because if I strengthen my community and I do everything to strengthen myself, I'm giving myself the best chance, aren't I? So if I'm continuing, and I live off 2 philosophies, excuse me. The first one is, got it from my dear dad, is that I've never made a mistake in my life. There's just a shitload of things I'm not going to do again. And the second one, which I love, is that everything that can be done 10% better. So I'm a big advocate for breath work. Now, you and I could do a breathwork session here, but how can we do it a little bit better? Well, we can find a space where there's more, or we could bring some indoor plants into this area so that we know the breathwork we're doing is with a more purified air. Now, how can we do a little bit better again? Well, we could have the glimpse of sunlight on our back. There's always a way to do better. So if you believe that you're continually trying to do it better, the mindset that you create for your body is that he's doing the best we can, so we're going to do the best we can for him. It's working for me anyway.
Looks like it's working, mate. What's piquing your curiosity at the minute then, Baz, if you're constantly curious?
My children. I got my 13-year-old twins. How can I give them a legacy of resilience, honesty, integrity, work ethic? How can I do that in this world where it's so challenging to put adversity in front of a child? So that's my curiosity. Of course, my it's not like I have little sections of life. I live a holistic life. I always say, if you're trying to juggle different plates, a gym plate and a career plate and a podcast plate and other plate, eventually you won't be able to keep up, and one of the plates is going to fall off. But I like to have everything I need, or everything that meant something to me when I saw the river of the waterfall of mortality. Everything that meant something to me that day is on that plate. Does that make sense? And each one of those things, there's not a stack of them, but each one of those things, and we're all different with that because different things mean different things to each other. But I put a lot of work into making sure I'm doing those things 10% better every day. So much so that I can replace, like as the children get older, that the complexity of the plate also changes slightly. But I keep it all on one plate, and that's the trick for me.
So what are those things on your plate if you were to bucket them?
Well, as I said, it's far more complex than that. But the children, my health, my community, the passing on of knowledge, so that I'm telling, we're sharing a beautiful story, and there's some people watching, which is fantastic. I hope there are listening, and when maybe see, what I do is share stories so that young people like yourself are slightly more prepared when adversity comes their way, or they're more likely to train for that adversity. You can't train for getting cancer, but you can train for difficult decisions, okay? And if you are resilient, you are strong, and I'm not on this planet, my children will be safer because you're strong. You see what I mean? And that's that modern day elder tribal vision I have of life. I'm an elder. I want to pass on the trials and tribulations that I have so that the young warriors like yourself and your viewers are better prepared for the moments of adversity that are definitely going to come your way. I don't want a society of crumbling people when I'm not here. But I need a society of vibrant, self-believing, strong humans, because that'll give my children the ideal environment to thrive. So that's a big focus for me at the moment.
You mentioned there that you're trying to instill some of these character traits into your children, so dealing with adversity, resilience. How are you going about that? It's
difficult. It is very difficult. Very difficult. And sport, as you say, is a great way. That's one of the main ways children learn adversity.
But also teamwork, leadership, communication.
Yeah. And rely. And what I say to my son, for example, he loves basketball, and I say it to my daughter as well. I say, and his basketball, his coach wanted him to try out for reps. I said, I'm not interested in reps at this stage of his life. Every 13-year-old kid in this country is the same. You're dreaming if you think your kid's going to go from rep 13 to being anyone in this world. But what I get to do is we change sides quite a lot because I want him to learn not to be a rep player, but be a great teammate. Learn how to make friends in teams. Making friends is difficult for kids these days. When I was a kid, if you walked past my house, you became my friend. You know what I mean? These days, if a kid walks past a house, they hide because they don't want an interaction. So I do put the kids, I like it when the kids are changing teams and changing sports because that means they have to learn again. They have to learn how to build friendships, which is really important. They have to learn how to build through a team from the bottom to a highly regarded member of the team, and they need to learn how to support others because if they go into a really hard team that they don't know anybody, they're going to need support, and if they need support, they'll learn to give support. Empathy is another key focus of mine. Empathy is a harder thing to teach than it might sound, but I've got some little tricks there as well that I share, and just around. I say to my daughter, if I squeeze you hard enough, what comes out? And I say, love comes out. And I started that by saying, if I squeeze an orange hard enough, what comes out? She says, orange juice. If you squeeze a lemon, what comes out? It's lemon juice. I said, will lemon juice ever come out out of an orange if I squeeze it hard enough? And she says, no. I said, so when I squeeze you, I only want love to come out. Some people, you squeeze them, you get hate and rejection. And we've got to learn to give love even under a difficult situation. That doesn't mean that we lower our expectations of others, but empathy and caring, if that's what you're leading into, which is very hard sometimes. It's very difficult to be caring sometimes to some people, but if you do and you work through the adversity of that, it'll end up with a great dividend.
You said there about giving your son some tips about how to make friends.
Yeah. Well, no. I put him in a situation where he has to make new friends.
So it's sink or swim sort of thing.
Yeah. And he's a beautiful human. The other thing I do, I'm lucky because I have a trade behind me. I was a carpenter and joiner originally. So what I do is, because I don't think enough kids do enough skills with their hands these days. So I'll take him into the garage, and I know I'm very lucky to be able to do this, but I'll do a basic, let's say, housing joint. It's just where you cut half of the timber out of one piece and half out of the other, and they finish flush. So I will do the process, and I'll talk the process right through, and then I'll just give him the saw and the chisel and the piece of timber and say, okay, it's your go now. Now, in the beginning, he says, what do I do first? But now that process that we work through on the different joints and the different little tiny skills, he knows he has to watch really hard when I'm doing, and he has to push his brain to remember the sequence I'm doing it. Because what I do is I don't help him at all. I just watch. I'm not going to let him cut himself or anything. Like, for example, if he puts his hand behind the chisel, I say, no, the hand has to stay beside or behind the chisel. And then he'll make a mistake. And in the beginning, we go, be really upset. I said, no, it's a mistake. Now, we know we won't do that again. And that is a micro step in adversity. So that is building resilience. It's a challenge. Any challenge will build resilience.
Yeah, beautiful. Baz, you and your wife, you had some difficulties in terms of getting pregnant. You now have, isn't a son and a daughter, twins?
True, no, that's a long story, and that period of my life is where the resilience came from that protected me from the cancer, and I'm happy to share it with you. We got married. We were trying to have children before we got married. We didn't meet until late in life, and we both were desperate for a family, and that would have completed what looked like a perfect picture. Financially, I'd become very successful. We had a beautiful home. We had and have still a beautiful home at North Bondi, and my business was thriving. Everything was going well, and I was confident. Okay, I was self-assured and confident. But what happened was we started to have miscarriages, and I didn't know how to adapt to that. So in hindsight, I probably wasn't as resilient as I thought I was. I was confident because I'd learnt then to make things work for me. But Leonie had a couple of miscarriages, and that became very difficult. For her, it's an incredible trauma. But as an alpha male who loves to control his domain and control his domain's enough for that, it was difficult for me. And as well as that, my beautiful mum at that time was going through cancer, and she was starting to struggle. And that was another, what we call borrowed trauma. So my wife is going through issues with infertility, and we're both going through issues with infertility. Mum was struggling with cancer, so there's a lot of borrowed trauma. I wasn't adapting well to that. I kept up that facade of the great alpha male who could conquer all, but inside I was very empty and hurting. And we decided to start IVF. We started IVF about 2 years before Mum passed away. And we'd had 6 or 7 or 8 attempts of IVF. And then Mum passed away from cancer. And I I really struggled with that because I seemed to have all this money and I seemed to be what everybody wanted to be. But again, I was unhappy. Why did she have to go so early? And I was really struggling. And about 12 months to 18 months after that, we were on our 12th attempt of IVF, and we were having some success. We were 17 weeks pregnant with twins. We'd seen the heartbeats. We'd done the scans. It was looking really promising. And one night I just heard that at that point, very familiar scream from the ensuite. And that was a clear indication to me. It's not really a scream, it's more a howl of pain and emotional pain. So I knew what that was, and I knew that those twins were gone. We went off to the hospital that night for what has to happen when a miscarriage happens at that term. And then 2 weeks later, in our oncologist's office, he leant forward and held our hands and told us that our journey for natural childbirth was over because now we were facing the fact that Leonie had cervical cancer, which meant she would have to have radiotherapy and a radical hysterectomy and some other surgeries that went with that. So at that point, I wasn't adapting, and I wasn't maintaining the human connection required for good holistic health because we were sick of telling people that we were pregnant and failing and pregnant and failing. And I just felt, and I personally, it's upsetting to say it now, but I personally really felt I was somehow to blame for that. I had worked up this negative bias conversation in my head, in my mind, which is a very powerful thing, the mind. But I'd worked up this very negative bias conversation that everybody that I cared about was being hurt because of me. And I blame myself for my mum's loss, which is ridiculous in hindsight. But at the time, I saw squarely the responsibility for that was on my shoulders. Then there's continual miscarriages. You can't blame your partner. There's no one to blame at all. But I took that trauma on as something that I was responsible for. And now Leonie has cancer. I just folded emotionally. I was cold and I was heartless, and I'd lost the human traits that make us human. And that took me to a really, really dark place, to a place that I've talked about, and it's why I'm so heavily involved with Are You OK Day. It took me to a place where I decided that everybody in this world would somehow be better off if I wasn't here. And I'd sort of mapped that journey out. And of course, it doesn't make any sense, but I figured that if I wasn't here, Leonie would have lots of money, and she might find someone that already has children, and I just couldn't forgive myself for everything that was going on. And it was I remember it really clearly because it was a Thursday night. The reason I remember it this clearly is because I was sitting in the car. It was raining, and a good friend of mine who was an apprentice of mine several years, 20 years earlier, he rang me up, and you didn't have the name on the phone back then. You just remembered numbers or resilience. And I knew that number, and I hadn't spoken to him for ages. And I thought, if this is going to be my last phone call, I'll just say goodbye quietly, and he won't know he won't be the wiser, and it'll be a nice voice to hear, my final voice. And it was funny because he said, "How are you, mate?" And I said, "Good, how are you?" Very coldly. And he said, "Well, it's Thursday night, so we're out of money." He said, "I've come down to the bottle shop to get a few beers," and his wife was making toasted banana sandwiches at home, and they were going to watch the footy show. And I just started to wail profusely, cry it was like a waterfall came out of me. And I just couldn't work out how someone had such a simple life. You can be out of money, you've got nothing, but you're so happy. Yet I appeared to have everything, and I couldn't be happy. And I just started to cry. And to his credit, and he just kept saying to me over and over again, "I'm with you, mate. I'm with you." And those words are so powerful. That belief in human connection is such a powerful thing. And he lived about 40 minutes away, and about 20 minutes of him saying, "I'm with you, I'm with you, I'm with you," he turned up right beside me, and he just got out of his car and opened my door and just reached in and held me and hugged me. And just said, "I'm here. We're okay." And, it was a long night, and it's a long story, but we sat together all night. We fell asleep together on the lounge, and that human connection, that recognition of the warmth of that touch and that protection of someone who you used to protect was so powerful. But it was a micro step, as I call it, to getting out of that darkness. And that next day we went for a walk on the beach. I hadn't taken my shirt off for about 2 years, but I took my shirt off because I wanted to feel the sun on me again. I thought, this is good. How can I make it a little bit better? So I took my shirt off and felt the sun at sunrise. And I'm sure it wasn't as smooth as I just said, like the next day and the next day, because the darkness is a hard thing to come back from. And it took probably 18 months, 2 years to get to a reasonably stable point again. And I folded back into darkness many times in that 2-year period. But I realized that a little micro step forward had far more benefit to me than these negative biased conversations I was having. And that's why I understand the importance of human connection, whether it's a perfect stranger. Think about what we're doing. As much as I've seen you on the podcast, we don't know each other. And this conversation will strengthen me, and I hope it will strengthen you a little bit. Well, that doesn't cost us anything. And it has a real sense of joy attached to it. It has a real sense of accomplishment attached to it, and a real sense of legacy attached to it. So for nothing, we both get something, and I learned that pretty quick. And I think it's so powerful. It's what I talk about most days. I hope that answered your question.
This podcast is sponsored by Chief Nutrition, and good news, podcast listeners get 10% off all Chief products using the link in the show notes. Chief offer protein powders, collagen protein bars, organic biltong, organic beef bars, and they're all fucking delicious. My personal favorite is the hazelnut brownie collagen protein bar. I have one every afternoon and it is the perfect snack. So use that link in the show notes and thank me later. If anyone ever finds themselves in the same situation as your friend did on that day, on the other end of that phone call,
Yeah.
what did your friend do well on that day?
He didn't tell me to do anything. He didn't ask anything of me. He didn't give me advice. And all he did was support me the only way he could by saying, I am with you. Because when someone says they're with you, or you know they're there and they're not even saying anything, it's like they're standing beside you, and it's like you can lean on them a little bit. And to know someone's beside you gives you a little micro. Nothing changes anything 100% overnight. But I couldn't say, there was I don't know if it was a soothing nature or it was just a sense of strength, micro strength I was getting every time. Sometimes you might have went a minute without saying anything, or 2 minutes. It's very hard to remember exactly how that went because I was a mess. But we know that if he just lets me know that I'm there if I need something, he said to me several times, you don't have to say anything, Baz, just know I'm with you. And that's all it took. So, I said to you before that I was cold through this period, and I wasn't connecting with humanity the way I should have been. It's because so many people had advice for me. People would say, you should read this story about this couple that were having trouble with miscarriage. You should do this. That is not my life. It's like when the teachers at school were saying to me, you're a failure. No, that's not my life. Maybe what you think, but that's not my life. And so it really frustrated me. It frustrated my partner as well. Like our friends would get pregnant and we'd go, fucking great, And that's why I personally disconnected a lot with my beautiful community. And that's why I'll never do it again. I'll never disconnect with community, not up to the last second.
How did the conversation with Leonie go?
It's not like it's a conversation. It's a chain. Yeah, it's a conversation. Nothing happens from there to there. I wasn't even talking to Leonie at that point. Okay. That's how, if you're contemplating taking your life, you start to limit your relationships. You don't want those people to be hurt. I think I actually wanted her to hate me, and that would make it easier. I said some horrible things to her, but she knew. She was like a rock, that woman. She knew the person in front of her wasn't the person she married. She knew I had a mental illness, which was depression. She tried to help me. And as an alpha male, the last thing you want is help, So I think, to answer your question, what should someone do if they're worried about someone like me, is let them know that you're standing beside them. Let them know that they've got the choice to ask you for help or lean on you for help. And always remember this, I was never going to ask for help. Okay. I was never going to say I'm in a bad way. People have these apps and stuff, and it's the happiness meter and all this stuff. I'm telling you now, if I filled in a happiness meter the day before I was going to commit suicide, I would have told you I was glowing. I was wealthy, had a beautiful home, a beautiful wife, all the best stuff. How could I not be happy? But that was going to be my last night. So, happiness meter, tick, reality, failure.
The anger toward yourself and blaming yourself for the miscarriages, your mum passing away, where did that come from?
I think it's, I'm that guy who's lived, I live in a world of understanding the value in being strong enough to show your emotions. I'm the pin-up boy for showing emotions. Okay, a huge macho guy who loves to express and accept and challenge emotions. But I grew up in a world where you didn't cry. If you couldn't put your hands up, you may as well just go home. So I've lived in both worlds. I've forgotten the question, but I lived in both worlds, and I don't know
The question was, where did the anger and blame toward yourself come
So
from?
it was a bit of both, and that's why it's so complex. Because I wanted to fight someone. When the first time we got a miscarriage, I wanted to,
Anger.
yeah, fuck, I'm going to fix. Who's to blame here? Put them in front of me. They're finished. Okay. Then the second one and the third one. The whole world's against me. Is everyone against me? How come everybody else is getting pregnant and I can't? Give me a chance. Put me in the ring with the best you got so I can prove to you that we deserve this. That was my attitude then, and that's not a great attitude, but it's the attitude of half the over 40-year-olds in this country, And I said to these young blokes that were working at my house today, just jokingly, I was teasing them all the time. They're young bulls, 20, 25 or something. They're bulls, strong, big young men. They're terrific. And I'm stirring them up all day, and I said to them, you two are in the top 3 hardest workers in this room, and you're making out. It was me first. And then, and when they give me a side, I said, no cheeky looks, I can still throw them and all this. And I said to them, and they said to me something, did you get in a bit of strife? This Irish lady said, did you get in a bit of strife when you were young, Baz? I said, yeah. I said, I got in strife until I was smart enough to know I didn't have to prove anything anymore. And that come well too late in my life. But I said, the smartest thing you young blokes will do is realize you don't have to prove anything. Because when you think you have to prove something, you'll be angry. And when you're angry, you're no good to anyone. And but if you've got nothing to prove, it's really easy to love someone. And you can be, we use the word vulnerable all the time. I'm not a fan of that word, but if you're brave enough to show that you care about people, you're much stronger than someone who can hold his hands up.
If your life was a movie, Baz, and the audience are in the cinema watching the movie of your life, and they get to that point of your life where a lot of these traumatic things are happening, and they can see that anger building up and building up, what would the audience in the cinema be screaming at the screen to you?
I think my life has been so diverse, and like I said, from one extreme to the other, that everybody in the audience, no one's ever asked that question. It's a cracker question. But I think everybody in the audience would see every man in the audience at least would see a part of them in me. And they would want me to take on what was ever in front of me. And I think through me, they would feel that was a victory for them. That's what I think. Never thought about that question. I think that's a great question, and I hope that makes sense. Yeah. But I do know, because I've been gifted so far with 65 years of life, and it's a full life. There's no doubt about it. And from rich to poor, from not being able to read and write to doing a speech at the Logies to speaking to corporate leaders all over the country, all over the South Pacific about resilience and leaning into adversity. Now, and we grew up in a 2-bedroom, 5-row house on a 6-lane highway. I relate to everybody from the kids starting out at the bottom of the ladder to the corporate leader who is making decisions that change the world. Every one of those men sees a little bit of me in them, and I think that's why I get so much support for what I do. I know on the second time I got cancer, the first person I told, of course, was Leonie, and the second person I told was Amanda Keller, my co-host on the show The Living Room. I'm not sure. I think we're about 6 years into the show. We'd won a couple of Logies already, and I told her the news, it was hurtful. It's hurtful to tell someone you've got that. It's more hurtful to hear someone's got that, but it was difficult. And I loved my life. I also then had children as well. I had my beautiful twins then. And I said to her, she was upset. I said, don't worry, I'll get through this. And she goes, if anybody else said that, I wouldn't believe them, but I know you will. And that's why we decided that we would share that journey with our viewing audience. And we announced that live on TV. And I just got inundated with love, incredible amount of love and support from hundreds of thousands of millions of people that have never spoken to me. And that power of that, the medicine that comes with that, love and encouragement from your community it's an incredible medicine. It's incredibly powerful. And I'm guessing your viewers are just wondering where these twins come from. Because we haven't touched on that, but
happy to touch. Happy to delve in.
After we recovered from my mental health issues and so on, we looked around the world. We looked at adoption, and that didn't work out. But then we traveled the world, and we discovered we looked at surrogacy, but we were just looking for the right country. And I'm very happy to say, after 7 attempts of surrogacy in India, our beautiful twins were born our beautiful twins were born, and happiest day of my life.
So your seed, someone else's oven?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's I'm glad you said it that way.
Yeah, we've done an episode on surrogacy before.
It's really important. Yeah, the DNA is all there, and but as we say to the kids, mummy's tummy didn't work properly, so we borrowed a tummy.
So how old were you, Baz, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 65. I'll be 66 in a couple of weeks after this.
So when you became a father, how old?
52.
All right.
Yeah. And lived a lot of life. And I'm very lucky that I've got beautiful, close friends whose grandchildren are the same age as my children. My younger brother's grandson is the same age as my kids. So I've got to see childhood twice. I've learned from their, not mistakes, I learned from the things they won't do again. And that's that legacy of being an elder, passing down that knowledge. Doesn't matter how old you are. You can be a modern day elder. You can pass on your knowledge. And it could be a young waitress who's been working at a coffee shop for 14 weeks is going to pass her knowledge on to the new girl who's taking on. Like that knowledge, life's experience and lived experience is an incredible legacy to pass on. And it strengthens everyone. And to tell people that this was really hard and I didn't think I could do it, but I did, is a really powerful tool, because when they don't think they can do it, it gives them the urge just to try a bit harder. And you can see how resilience creeps in with that. It's really important.
Any fears around becoming a parent?
This is a brazen thing to say. I don't think I fear much at all. No, I don't think I fear much at all. I think being a parent has been an incredible journey. And the life I led up to being a parent was an arduous life in the eyes of some. But because of that life, I am who I am today, and my twins are the most perfect little beings on earth. So I think everything's worked out for the best.
It's a conversation myself and my partner are having quite a lot at the minute. When's the right time?
Yeah.
As a bloke, I'm sort of like, it never really feels like the right time. There's a lot of fear around loss of freedom.
Yeah.
Added responsibilities.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for me?
I say this to a lot of young men. I think it was the week before I got married. I was thinking, this is the wrong thing. And I think we think those things. But, we sum it up in our head. Why did we think it was the right thing? I gave up on having children about our 4th or 5th miscarriage in. I thought it was the wrong thing to do. Thankfully, Leonie had the resilience, and she was able to wait for me to join in again. But the fear is is it the fear that negative bias and fear is a great thing. It's the reason we look both ways before we cross the road. So look both ways before you get married. If there's no cars coming and you can't get physically hurt, sure, there'll be some emotional ups and downs, but you can always, none of them are ever going to cure you. None of them are even going to hurt you. And if you get through them, you'll be stronger. So, it's, I think this is a world where we don't have a lot of adversity. So I think getting married is difficult because I don't expect anything to go wrong. You look at all the older couples that their lives, Leonie and I have been through such hardship. I think if you looked at it, you say, why are you two still together? But because that adversity made you stronger. And that's the quest. I'm watching maths at the moment, if they just learn to fight for something, the end result would be the reward of connection, But it's easy to let it go.
So is that the secret to a long marriage, Baz? Keep fighting for it?
Yeah, it's definitely fighting for yourself, fighting for your own happiness, respect your boundaries, respect the boundaries of others, and understand what the common goal is, and talk. Any failure that we've had in our relationship is me not talking.
Communication.
Yeah, me fearing that telling the truth would be too hurtful.
I can definitely relate to that.
and telling having a difficult conversation is adversity. Have difficult conversations. If someone's doing something at work that you're really struggling with, and the answer to that is to ring the boss or HR or that person, ring them, because that difficult conversation will be easier the next time. So you will face less adversity because you have more resilience. Yeah. But procreation, having children, matrimony, it's all scary, but it's also incredibly beautiful. And like I said, when I was at that waterfall and could see the last 90 days, there's the waterfall and there's the days. All I wanted to do was hold hands with the people I love and tell them that I love them. Tell them that I love them and tell them why I love them and tell them how I love them. Yeah.
Baz, if we go back to that period of time where you just had that phone call from your mate and he came round, you said the recovery from that process took around 2 years. So what did that 2 years look like in terms of the tools that you use to sort of build up that resilience over that period?
It's a bunch of things I have to do. I had to bring back human connection into my life, which you can't do overnight.
So how did you do that?
Just micro steps. Everything is a micro step. Ask myself, what benefit will I get from this? What do I lose by doing this? And what will it cost me emotionally, mentally, physically, whatever? And you'll see that, well, okay, there's not a lot in to get a reward there. So, hey, mate, I haven't spoken to you for a while. I'd love to catch up if you've got time. Don't have time this week or the week after, but I can catch you the week after that. Okay, I look forward to that. Don't expect things to change overnight. I say you don't wake up on a Monday morning depressed. You wake up on the Monday morning after a shit weekend. But it takes months or years. It takes years to get into a deep, dark depression. And it takes years to get out of a deep, dark depression. And you need to rebuild your human connection. You need to rebuild your curiosity on how you can be better. And you need to, that then will allow yourself to give yourself some of that self-love that we require. And I don't really like that saying, but what I'm getting at is I don't mean you need a boys' trip away. That ain't what I'm saying. It means that the things that matter need to matter. And you can't go from A to Z. You have to You have to creep through that and get to a point. And what you saw pre-depression as the pinnacle might not be the pinnacle this time around. And understand this as well. Life is never going to be perfect. If it was perfect, it would be over. There'd be nothing else to do, so why would you bother? Like if you woke up tomorrow morning and everything was in place and everything was perfect, what would you do? Yeah. Well, would you be brave enough to ring that person you haven't spoken to for 3 years because we had a petty argument? They're the things that change your life. Yeah. And just saying that, I mean, I made that up 3 years ago. There was a period in my life where every New Year's Eve, I didn't make a New Year's resolution. I would make a New Year's phone call, bring up someone I hadn't spoken to for years, for whatever reason, just to see what they're up to see what journey where they are in their river of life, and talk about where I am in my river of life.
Do you still do that?
Yeah, I do that on a daily basis now. Conversation and a meaningful, deep conversation is so valuable to our own humanity, and it's incredibly valuable to others. And so I see the value of that every day now.
So if I'm someone who's currently in that dark space, human connection, what else?
Let's say this, because I think this is very important. If you're in that, what I would rather from society is that the people around that person recognize that they've made some changes in their life, because it's very difficult. They're the ones that are having a handicap. They're the ones with the mental health issue. So they can't see life rationally, okay? So you need to give them a choice. Hey, would you like to catch up? I've noticed we haven't spoken as much recently. Is there anything I can do to help out? And then, check in with them and just let them say, if you never need a chat, I'm here. Because just saying that will give them the strength to realize that there is someone there. So they do matter. But what I'm trying to say is, let's not leave the onuses on people that are in a dark place to say, hey, I'm in a dark place. Let's, as a society, reach out and have continual, meaningful, deeper conversations with people we care about. And if it seems, well, they haven't spoken to me, imagine, look at you, you're a handsome young man, you dress well and you carry yourself well and you're strong. Now imagine if you put on 15 kilos and you're wearing your pajamas at 3:00 in the afternoon. It's difficult for me to say, hey, Chris, how are you traveling, buddy? Because I know you're traveling shit. Okay. That's a difficult conversation that has to be had. And you might say, I'm going good, mate. And then you say, okay, if you ever feel that life's a struggle, would you talk to me? Because I know personally, lately I've been struggling. So a conversation would help me. That's often the way I'll go about it. But if I can see it, it's clearly happening. Do you know what I mean? If someone's not taking care of themselves the way they used to, they're not dressing the way they used to, they don't seem to want to connect on a human basis the way they used to, your partner will see it straight away and she will try, or he will try and advise you what to do. That's the wrong thing, because that's taken away your choices. So it's just to give people the choice to realize they're cared for.
Yeah, beautiful. So when you came out of that dark period, Baz, am I right in saying you retired?
I was already retired. At that point, when that was one of the things that happened. So that must have been 2005 or 6. I'd done just 2006. It must have been, because I was doing really well financially, and here's a great sign. I talk about it now. I would stay at work until 7:00 at night. And then I would take the longest journey I could to get home to avoid conversation with my partner. Okay. That means I would ring her up and say, I don't need dinner tonight, I've had it. And I'd stop at a service station, get a pie and a Mars bar and a pint of milk. I was at about 118 kilos. Okay. It's glaringly obvious something's wrong. He doesn't want to talk to people. Work was my savior. Do you know what I mean? I would stay at work from 6 a.m. in the morning till 7 p.m.
Because
at
you can
night.
control it.
Well, and plus, it kept me away from a personal conversation.
Mm.
And I could say, I'm too busy. I'm too busy. You know, I don't want to talk about surrogacy. I don't want to talk about infertility. I'm too busy trying to make a fortune. That was a great excuse. Do you know what I mean? But I'd put on a stack of weight. I was hurting in a lot of ways. I didn't care about my persona anymore, and I wasn't engaging with people. So, you know, people would see it and they would ask me, "You going all right?" Of course I am. Have a look at me. You know, biggest, strongest, richest bloke you know. But struggling dark inside, I tell you. Yeah.
How did the sailing around the world on a yacht come about?
I said to myself at that point, you know, the last time this is one of the micro moments that turned into a giant moment. I sort of said to myself, okay, think about the last time you were super happy. Okay. Walking on the beach with my friend made me really happy. What were the other things that made me happy? And my brother and I lived out in the western suburbs of Sydney, and my dad had a little tinny with a 7.5 horsepower Mercury on it, and we would push that across the highway and push it into the river there, and we'd just burn up and down the river. And we used to say that when we got older, we would put a cabin on that tinny and we'd go around the country. And I said to myself, well, that's what I said I wanted to do. And my dad was still alive and he was depressed because we'd lost mum. I said, Dad, I'm going to go to France and I'm going to buy a big yacht and we're going to sail it home. And so I did that. Isn't it funny? I can just do that. I can just go and buy it, but I can't be happy. So I bought the yacht. We commissioned it in Antibes in the south of France. Beautiful little
lovely
walled city there.
Yeah.
And I joined I paid and joined the Ark Rally to sail back to Australia and test myself. I wanted to start testing myself, but I just fell in love with the Mediterranean. I just, you know, so the yacht literally stayed in the Med, and I spent 6 months of the year on the yacht with Leonie. She was still working on surrogacy and adoption and stuff like that. And sailing was a fantastic way to, you know, you have to think forward again, and you have to challenge it. The first boat I ever owned was a 52-foot yacht, you know, so I had to learn how to sail, you know, and back that thing into a mooring, you know. And as I say to everybody now, the slower you go, the slower you bump into things. So don't rush into, I say this a lot in my course. When adversity comes along, allow the feeling before you try and fix the problem. So allow the feeling, what's scaring you about this adverse moment, and recognize that, because I think the lesson often is in the fear and the emotion of the moment. So allow to feel that, so you recognize that, then steer yourself away. You know, in a marina, when you've got a big yacht like I've got, isn't that a wank to say that? When you've got a big yacht like I've got, you back into the marina so you can drive away from the problem. That's the same as I back in, I can get scared and I can get scared and I can get scared. I'll get too scared, I can just drive out. If I drive in, I got to back out, and backing's a lot harder. So I think that's what I'm trying to say. Back into the problem, feel the danger, feel the temptation to go a little harder, then go a little harder and go a little harder. Because when we're dealing with emotion, the worst that can happen is I put it into forward and drive out. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. So when these problems come along, and sailing definitely teaches you that, experience. You know, people say, oh, what do you do if there's a storm? Well, I love a storm because it tests me out. And I know the longer I'm in that storm and the harder it is, the closer I am to the sunshine and to the break in the clouds. And I've learned that through sailing, and that has taught me to know that adverse moment, if we face it and we lean towards it and we take it on, we're one step closer to the end of it. And once we get to the end of it, we've got all that buoyancy of knowledge, all that buoyancy of resilience, and we float even higher in the river.
Any dicey moments on that sailing?
Thousands of them. I love them.
What stands out?
I think, have you got time for a quick story?
Yeah, mate. 100%.
Picture this. I think America had just declared war in Libya. I think it's around 2008, 2009, a long time ago. You were just a boy then. I was sailing single-handedly in Europe, but just to give myself another rack. But I wanted to sail to Tunisia and leave my boat in Tunisia for the winter because it's warm all year and dry and cheap because I'm a bit tight. And all of a sudden we're at war with Muslims. Okay. That's, of course we are. That's the way to get out of everything is to be at war with someone. And the couple of guys that were going to be on the yacht with me for that journey decided that they were going to get off. They didn't want to go there. They thought I was crazy. And as I said to them, I think if you walk up straight to a guy and put your hand out to shake hands, whoever he is, you're halfway there. I think I'll be pretty safe. I'm not that concerned. So I sailed single-handedly from Italy to North Africa, to Tunisia, which isn't that far if you know the Med. I think it was 4 nights sailing and probably 5 days, a little bit less. But the long story short, I didn't tell Leone where I was going, and these guys got off the boat, and I hinted that I might stop at Sicily or a place called Malta. But I decided just to keep going. I skipped Malta altogether, and I went nonstop from Amalfi to North Africa. And, sailing single-handedly is quite arduous physically and mentally. And as I'm sailing through the long nights and there's big tankers going back and forth and you're watching the radar and you're trying to get some sleep and you're getting woken up to alarm, that fatigues the mind and fatigues the body. And by the time I got within about 50 nautical miles of the port of, or the harbour of Tunisia, I started to think, no one knows where I am. And, what if something does go wrong? I started to self-doubt a little bit there. Now, long story short, I got to the Bay of Tunisia, which is about 40 nautical miles deep. So that's another 5 hours sailing. And I like to arrive at places in the morning around 8 o'clock. I think everybody's happiest there. Everybody's drinking tea or coffee, and there's no drunks or, not that there's any drunks in Tunisia because there's no alcohol. But so I said to myself, I looked at the chart and I thought, I'm just going to find a little thing. I haven't really slept well for 4 days. I'm going to drop the anchor here. And this is a great story. So there it is. I look at this little bay. I knew where the prevailing winds. I know I'm going to be protected there. I dropped the anchor in this bay, and you're not allowed to do that. You've got to actually drive straight to a check-in area, but I did it anyway, thinking I'll be fine. I've gone down to my bedroom and I've had a shower and I've shaved and shampooed my hair and put on some nice clothes, and I felt good about myself. And I thought, I'm going to sleep in my bed. I haven't slept in the bed for 4 nights. I tuck in and I'm just dozing off, and I have a radar on and it has a perimeter. And if anybody comes into the perimeter, alarm goes off. So the alarm starts going off. Bugger. I race up and I look at the radar, and there's these little boats all around the perimeter. And as they come in, the alarm would go off, they'd back off. I'm thinking, shit, what's going on here? And all this talk about pirates and stuff starting to really get to me, And so I brought it into just like 250 meters, so it's very close now. And I'm watching them, and they come in and come in and come in, and sure enough, beep beep beep, and they back off. Beep, beep, beep. So I turned off the anchor light, and I thought, bugger it. If you want to try and take me out, you're going to have to do your best. So. This is a long story. No, worse than that. Like, it's a big boat, so it's not easy to get into, right? And I couldn't see them. And I've got night vision binoculars. I can't see who's out there, right? But I've got my 2 spear guns. I've got 1 knife strapped on the thigh. I've got my equalizer, like the little baseball bat. And I've just decided I'll sleep on the thing, or I'll sit on the thing. And if they try and come and get me, Like, I'm delirious now. I'm exhausted, and I thought, I'm just going to go out swinging, you know? And, but I'm shitting myself as well. But long story short, is about 5 o'clock, I'm guessing it was 5:30, the sunshine wakes me up, and it's like I didn't spear myself because both spear guns are loaded, you know, like what an idiot. And I wake up and I look up, and sure enough, there's 5 little fishing boats with their beautiful little families on, and they're holding up fish and stuff. And what I've done is gone into the bay where they put their nets, and I dropped my anchor right in the middle of their nets. But as I said, if I had a gun that night, I would have just mowed them all down, you know, because I was convinced they were pirates, they were coming to kill me. So that was a dicey moment that wasn't dicey at all, but a bit of fun and a good story. As it happened, they didn't speak a word of English. They gave me some fish. They gave me some crayfish. I gave them some Bondi Beach T-shirts that would have been practically useless to them, and some stuffed koalas. And we sat on my boat and their boats. They gave me a beautiful towel as well. Because those beautiful little fishermen, their whole family, little family lives on this 20-foot open boat, you know, sleep on the deck while the dad's pulling in the nets. Incredible.
What did you learn from that experience?
Don't have a gun on a yacht because you'll kill someone. No, just again, you know, don't let yourself get to that exhausted state. But again, I pushed myself, and what a great story. You know, most people would use that as their primary story in life. I haven't told that story for 10 years.
Yeah, beauty. I'm glad we got it on the podcast.
Yeah, very good, very good.
Baz, one thread that sort of I want to pull on that sort of come up as part of this conversation. I think about the phone call that you got when you're in that dark place. Think about the surfing accident that led to actually leading you to find out you had a tumor.
Yeah.
Are those things dumb luck, or is there something else at play in the universe?
It's another great question, Chris. Are they dumb luck, or are they... I used to say the universe protects you, but I'm not sure that's true. I lived by that for a while, though. You know, I think... is it just you know, you think about the surfing incident. I could have, when I cracked my neck, I could have went to the doctors the next day and still found out I had cancer. I think, I think there's a bit of luck in there. I think there's a bit of personality in there. I think there's a bit of ego in there. And there's a little bit of the complexity of life in both those stories, you know. I don't think any of it's just dumb luck, though. I think it's more complex than that. And, or at least the romantic side of me wants it to be more complex than that. Yeah. I'll tell you another story if you've got time, though.
Hit me.
And I don't know if this, I reflect on this one a lot. You know, the second time I got cancer, my life was in the most perfect situation it could be in. I was in great physical condition. My children were born and healthy and gorgeous. I'm on one of the highest rating TV shows in the country. And I'm working with 3 of the most amazing humans on earth and most talented people on earth, a part of a giant crew, which is an amazing crew of people. And I haven't told this story very often either, but I'd had a pain in my ribs a couple of weeks earlier. And when you've had cancer before you get a pain, you shoot yourself. So I went to my doctor and I said, and because I'm supposed to get a checkup every 2 months. I said, I haven't been in for a while. I got a bit of a pain in my rib. I think he says, we'll do a blood test, X-ray, and I'll let you know how you're going, and come back, you know. So just by connecting with him, I felt confident again. Do you know what I mean? So, excuse me, I had the blood test, urine test, and I had an X-ray. Full body X-ray is what I was supposed to have. I'd supposed to have it 6 months earlier, but didn't do it. And I'm working on a segment in the show called Take Home Baz. And that's where I go into Bunnings and I walk up to strangers in the aisle. Literally, this is true. And I say, what are you up to? So trying to patch a hole in the wall. I said, well, come down to aisle 11. There's this thing here. And if you don't know how to do it, I'll go home and show you how to do it. And you can learn from that, show and learn. Anyway, this number comes up on my phone, and I thought I recognized it, so I answered it. And imagine this: there's cameras and sound men everywhere, producers, runners. Now, they're a big part of my life, but they're not my family. And I'm filming a show, and I know the importance of getting it done. And it was my hematologist on the line, and he said, "Baz, how are you? How do you feel?" I said, "I feel good, mate. How are you?" And I said, "I'm good." He said, "You haven't come in to see me since the blood test." I said, "Yeah, I figured I felt all right. And I figured if there was something wrong, you would call me." And he said, "I'm calling you." He said, "There's something wrong." And, when you're on TV, you're the center of attention. And I'm in Bunnings, Baz Du Bois in Bunnings. I'm the center of attention anyway. So I've got a lot of eyes on me. And I've just been told that the cancer is back, but it's a lot worse than it was. That's what he said. I said, "All right, I'll come in this afternoon." He says, "I think you should come in now." I said, "I can't come in now. I'll come in this afternoon." I hung up the phone and I looked straight into the lens and I said to my producer, "Let's keep going." I couldn't tell those people what was going on because I had to tell my wife, and I knew I couldn't ring her up. So I had to finish the day of filming. That was a really, really bizarre world moment, for you will. But so your question about dumb luck, it brought that up in my mind. So, no, I don't think any of it's dumb luck. I think it's just the way. I always say this: we're a sum of every day added up. Okay, and even on that day in 2017, my number added up to a point, and my resilience level and everything I had learned up until then. I was 57 years old. Everything I had learned was with me, and I just hung up the phone and went straight back into TV mode. What a bizarre world we live in, isn't it? And we've all got those stories in our own way. But I don't think we celebrate our stories enough. I don't think we personally celebrate our own story enough. Often people will try and influence your story, but it's your story and it's a great story. I think that's how I'll leave this. Your story is a great story. You should believe in it and you should lean into it and you should love it.
That's a perfect place to leave it, Baz.
I think so.
Thank you very much for coming on and sharing, mate. Really appreciate it.
Good
Cheers,
man.
mate. Thank you.